evening. Welcome to the February 7th, 2024 Finance Board meeting. The dates are a little blurry right now. Starting off on the agenda, we have some budget reviews for economic planning, conservation, and community preservation. And I think there's a couple other that fall under your umbrellas. So turn it over to you guys to walk through really quick. I think you know everyone on the board other than our newest member, who Mark. This is his second meeting, so he's taken his time to dive into the information. So I think we're all good to go.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Annie Schindler. I'm the town planner and conservation agent. Yeah, my department tends to do a lot of miscellaneous things. So, you know, planning, zoning, conservation commission all fall within my department. And then, you know, just kind of a lot of other things as well. But I'll just kind of jump right in, I guess, to my budget. Start off with the easy stuff. So the planning board expense line item last year was $7,360, and I level funded that. It is perfectly reasonable for what my department does and what it needs. The things that money goes towards is, you know, your typical office supplies, mailings, and things of that nature, but it also goes to, you know, continuing education for myself or board members if they choose to do it. You know, it's been used to match for grants. Our comprehensive master plan, we used funds from that line item to fund our housing production plans. We use funds from that line item to fund. And then another thing that's an ongoing expense out of that line item is for E-code. So I think for the past like 4 or 5 years, our zoning bylaws, our conservation, wetland protection bylaws, and our subdivision rules and regulations have been stored on E-code, which is an online bylaw website, I guess. I don't really know how better to explain it. And at the town meeting last year, we moved all of our bylaws. So all of the town of Groveland's bylaws are now housed within E-code, and my budget pays for the yearly maintenance on that, for that account. E-code's great. It's a really great way for folks to be able to interact with our bylaws in a much more user-friendly way. There's a search bar instead of having to flip through a bunch of papers. So that's great. So that's kind of that expense line item, no changes there. To get into a smaller change, so within my budget, the Merrimack Valley Planning Commission assessment is housed within there. And so they can go up a maximum of 2.5%. And so based on our assessment from last year to this year, it's a $69 increase. I can't say enough good things about the Merrimack Valley Planning Commission and how much they help a community like ours, which is a lot smaller and doesn't have a lot of really technical support. One thing that I use them for constantly is for our MyMap system, which is our GIS system. It's like the first thing I pull up when I get into the office, and it's not just my department. The highway department uses them for stormwater mapping. The assessing department uses it for parcel mapping. I mean, they help us with transportation aspects of things, so they're a great asset. And then the kind of bigger item, I guess, is that, so for the last 2 years, I have been the town planner and conservation agent. I've been fulfilling 2 roles for the town. And in conversations with the town administrator and the town accountant, one person doing these 2 roles is just not sustainable with the amount of permitting review and writing and regulations you need to kind of keep up with. And so in the budget request for this year, you'll see the 2 salary line items now, one for the town planner and one for a conservation agent. The town planner would be a full-time position, the conservation agent would be a part-time position. And so the way we tried to work this out is taking my current salary and trying to keep it within the confines of what my current salary is by, you know, as much as we possibly can, to get reasonable salaries. We took a look at the Collins study, which, because it was done for a planner and conservation agent, you can't fully rely on that data, but we also, I know I poked around at a lot of other communities and what they were hiring at, and so you'll see for this budget request, it was $75,185 for a town planner, and then $20,000 for a conservation agent, which would be out of the general fund, and then the the conservation revolving fund would help supplement that conservation agent salary line item. I think it was by about
87,701.
Thank you very much. And so that's, without that conservation fund, it would be a total increase of $12,118 for the salary portion of this budget. And that's kind of that's really kind of the biggest thing, I guess, for my budget. And I totally understand that this year's a little hairy with the budget. But if I could talk myself blue in the face about how important I think both of these positions are. So I can if you want, but.
No, thank you. I think a lot of us are aware of everything that you've done and how much you've added since you've joined.
Thank you. I had a good foundation with our prior planner.
She was okay.
She was a better director than she was a planner of the department.
Does anyone have any questions for Annie? It's pretty straightforward.
How was the work? This is an official that you have two roles, the way you broke it down, am I correct? The 75,185 and then the 20,000, so one's for conservation and one's for town planner.
Correct.
How did the job change? You did it last year, I'm just wondering. No, I'm serious.
No, I know. No, absolutely. It's a very valid question. With a position or with a department like the Economic Development Department with the Zoning Board, Planning Board, and Conservation Commission underneath it, there's ebbs and flows to when we're busy and when we're not. And so, if it's busy for planning and slower for zoning and conservation, it's very manageable. But if all three boards are busy with applications, there is just too much going on for any one person to keep straight.
But who's the other person? I mean, you're the one, so what?
Right now, no one.
You mean is that you would have to work longer to get, if it got to do that, right?
I wouldn't say longer. I'd say it's just impossible to upkeep. So I've had to take on more of the grant and economic development focus so that she can just focus solely on applications and permitting as they go through the process. So there's just too much work for one individual, and obviously we can't have her working well beyond 40 hours a week. So we've had to take things off her plate in order for things to get accomplished. So
So you've reduced some things that she has to do, is that
Yes.
what you did?
Because otherwise it was
So were those other things important that someone else needs to do it?
Oh, certainly.
And where's that?
Right now,
That's
the town.
what I thought.
Yeah,
That doesn't work for me.
no, it doesn't.
Okay.
And
Thank you for
there are
being-
important things that she's had to take
I know,
on.
but she's already working 100 hours a week as it is.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's why the two positions are needed, because there's so much, there are so many important initiatives within this department beyond just the planning, zoning, and conservation, which those are very important too, but there's so much more that this department could be doing with just two brains instead of one.
I agree with you. I
Yeah.
just wanted to know where the unloading was happening.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you talk a little bit about your opinion on whether sharing a planner with another community would or would not work? If we could even find such person. I'm just curious your
Yeah.
thoughts on that.
Absolutely. So, when I was saying I was doing research into what other communities were doing for, like their hiring and whatnot, and what these positions were looking like, salary-wise, someone I reached out to was the conservation agent in West Newbury, as she used to be the shared conservation agent for West Newbury and Merrimack, I believed. And so I talked to her about that, and obviously this is conservation and not planning, but I think the premise kind of still stands, and she said it was impossible. She was completely burnt out. She was letting things slip in one community while she was trying to pick up things in another, and it's a lot to juggle. I mean, I'm in one community trying to juggle 3 boards that are doing different things, and I'm having a hard time. And so I think, you know, it could certainly be possible if it's a slower community. I know Merrimack uses a consultant for a town planner because they just don't see much in the way of applications for their planning board and zoning board. Groveland right now, we are seeing a lot of applications for things, and I also think when you get one person in the community, or one person in the, or a person doing one community, I think I assume they would care more. You know, they have more of an invested outlook on the community when their attention isn't split between 2. I don't know. I think if I were to be a town planner in 2 roles, like putting myself in that position, I know it would be a hard thing to juggle.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that input, because that's something, because I've thought of too, is like these roles, if there's a way to share them with another community. But again, like you say, like if there's the need in 2 communities, how do you prioritize who takes
Exactly.
precedent over the other one when they're both under the, you know,
Yeah.
deadline or like whatever, however you want to
Yeah,
look at it. So
Definitely. And I think just with seeing where the planning board and zoning board, the direction they've been going in and things that I know that are kind of like up and coming, it's going to be busy for that department, specifically just with permitting and applications. Regardless of, you know, we have our hazard mitigation plan ongoing, our housing production plan ongoing, we have a lot of other initiatives going. So I just don't think it would work. But.
there's a lot of initiatives that are coming down from the state level
Yeah,
that,
there's that too.
you know, it's
There's-
not like you can be like, okay, yeah, I'll get to that
Yeah.
when there's time. It's, those come with their own deadlines with no respect to what else the community is doing as a
Yeah,
whole.
the
So-
MBTA zoning, I think, is what you're probably referring to. Yeah, so, and that's definitely, we were lucky enough to receive a grant for additional assistance for that, which is huge help because there's a lot of moving pieces with that, and even ongoing. I could talk about it for a long time, but I will not, unless anyone has questions, and I'm happy to answer them.
How many grants are you currently managing?
Right now, none, because Rebecca has taken over a lot of them, because I just got to a point where things were slipping, because I was trying to help and manage a lot of grants while also trying to get the permitting stuff done. But it's not just grants, it's also projects like the hazard mitigation plan and housing production plan. But, you know, we also had an uptack culvert that just got replaced, so there was managing of that Rebecca was doing. There was the comprehensive master plan that was being worked on, the 150 Center Street Strawberry Fields feasibility study, municipal vulnerability preparedness grant. I can't think of anything else off the top of my head, but there's got to be more.
And Annie's being modest. One of the things that is really great with working with Annie as a team, at least for myself, and having taken on some of the responsibilities, is that like it is really a group effort. She'll start like an application for me, and then I'll jump in and I'll take care of it, and I'll do this and I'll do that, and then she'll come in and she'll be like, no, about it with this, and we go back and forth and we get ideas, and we've been very successful in getting a lot of monies. I mean, I think total since Annie has been here, we brought in probably another $1.5 million that we hadn't had since I was just doing the role a few years ago. So it really has been something that she's really excelled at, and I think that without her efforts, none of it would be possible. It's just it's just because there's so much going on, it really takes both of us to kind of be jump in, jump out, do this, do that, and so it really has been instrumental in having her in the role and being able to succeed as she has.
We're a good team.
You are, and it's clear. You can just gets it, and that's, we appreciate that. Can I ask one more question?
Absolutely.
So you're talking about just being, and this is just sort of informational, I'm
Oh,
just
yeah.
curious, because I do watch all the Board of Selectmen meetings, I'm at all of these meetings, but I do not find time to watch every zoning and planning meeting as well. So I'm just curious what all the permitting is. I'm just curious what's popping up around town, what's been going on.
Oh, sure.
What are we as residents going to see happening?
100%. So I just put the 2023 town report together. So I have that on the top of my mind. So for planning board, there were the new storage facilities going in on Salem Street that got permitted. Cedardale got a cell tower permitted, or well, 20 Bear Hill Road, where Cedardale is, whatever. That had to go through planning and zoning. Actually, the storage units had to go through planning and zoning as well. So while it's happening at the same time, there are 2 different regulations, 2 different applications, 2 different permits that need to be written. But speaking of Cedardale, I know I have had multiple realtors reach out to me about housing at Cedardale. I mean, it's all very preliminary, but that could certainly be coming very soon. Excuse me. As far as zoning, you know, that large-scale 40B development, that is on Salem Street as well, near the storage facilities. They are like right at the finish line for getting their building permits. So that's on its way. We, through the zoning board, permitted a junk removal facility where the old Millennium Plastics was, right near the highway yard on Center Street. Recently, we're just finishing up permitting for 912 Salem Street, so right next to Groveland Gas. They're going to be putting like contractor units in, so it'll be like a little office for people to go into, and then also contractor base for people to work out of. So that had to go through planning, zoning, and conservation. What else? I know that.
Well, the other thing is the inspections and.
Oh, well, yeah, and then I have to do
ongoing
site visits for all of it.
monitoring.
But there's a lot coming down the way. I know I spoke with someone recently about 181R School Street, that vacant lot on School Street that's very overgrown over near Whitestone. People are looking to do a subdivision there. Someone approached Rebecca and I a couple weeks ago about a large-scale affordable housing for 55 and older folks somewhere in town too.
Katie Lane.
Katie Lane is ongoing over on King Street.
Regional school.
Oh yeah, Pentucket, that's almost done construction-wise, thank goodness. And then it's also, you throw on top of like Conservation Commission when people need a replacement septic system and things like that. So it's hard for one person to manage. I mean, whenever I do an update for my boards, I'm like, I'm sure there's something else that I just can't think of right now because there's only so much that I can.
Like a lot to me.
It's good though. I mean, there's a lot of stuff happening in Groveland. Whether people want it to or not, I guess, is the other aspect of that, but it has nothing to do with me.
Thank you, Annie.
Yeah.
Thanks, Annie.
Yeah.
Mike, do we want to turn it over to you for?
Sure. So Annie does a great job of juggling things, and I think that the commission has really noticed the difference of having a professional on board with us. Up until about 5 years ago, we were operating all volunteer, which meant writing our own permits and documents, managing applications and sending it out, all the paperwork that goes along with it, monitoring projects, and then closing them out. And having done many of those things myself, I don't think that our prior plan was sustainable to do it with volunteer help. So fortunately, we started to fund a part-time position. But with what Annie's done is really taken the commission's work to a whole new level. And so it's just really very professionally managed. I think anyone who has come in for a permit, whether it's for a large project like the regional school or, you know, a single-family house with a septic system, has been dealt with in a very professional manner. And I think that Groveland's Conservation Commission is held in high regard, I think, by Mass DEP, right? They're not challenging us or telling us we're making mistakes. And also people who are applying for permit are very happy. So when people are happy, then I think hopefully we're doing something right. So this year, as you see, Annie, we've got continue with a part-time position, just breaking it out of the town planner job. And the commission will provide $8,771 from our fees towards the salary to hopefully keep someone like Annie or a professional on staff. The other two funding, we're requesting $3,000 for our expenses, which is a small, previous expenses were $3360, so it's a small cut in that, but I don't think there's any problem. We don't have any problem with that. And our stipends, again, are $1,400. As you know, occasionally we have commissioners who want stipends, but many of our commissioners are willing to forego the stipend. But I would recommend leaving it in there. And then if people decide to turn it back to the town, so be it. I think that being under the department, you know, you see everything is kind of switched to really one department, has brought a lot of efficiencies to not only our finances, but also our permit procedures. I've been on the commission for 23 years, and during that time, one of the biggest things that we had to deal with was lack of communication between the planning board and the Conservation Commission in particular, but also with the zoning board too. Many times there's, you know, a larger project is coming in and the planning board might make some decisions and we don't really know about them on conservation. Then we're having to kind of get into a small dispute about which one is a better way to go. So that's kind of disappeared. I think, you know, again, having Annie there to manage things, she has her eyes on everything that all three boards are doing, which really helps with efficient issuance of permits.
Am I missing a page? Because I don't see any numbers here. Numbers.
Page 27. They're all grouped together.
Oh, it's all together.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It's still in here.
Oh, it's buried in, okay, that's
They're
320.
combined.
Oh, got it, okay.
I saw the roots on the back of that other page. I was like, I like that picture.
I tried to make it pretty.
It was. I liked it. It was very catchy.
Does anyone have any questions from Mike? Go ahead.
So, currently, Annie, you service 3 boards. You service the Planning Board, the Zoning Board, and Conservation Commission. And to your point, the communication has never been better because you have one point person at all 3.
Right.
Under your plan, one of those oversights would go to another person. You do you have any concerns that the communications now may be affected or impacted by this proposed change? Or are
No.
you still confident that you'll get the messages? Because now you'll be detached from that umbilical cord you had to planning and zoning.
Yeah, I don't think I have any concerns, because again, we're operating under one department, and we're in the same room. You know, it used to be that planning was in one office and in conservation, so there was no means of communication. But I think even though we would be going to, say, two separate people, still the communication would be there, because they're in the same office and covered under the same department.
Yeah, and one of the things that was a really big project for me this past year and a half has been to merge our filing system under the department, because prior to when it was separate and the department didn't exist yet, Concom had all of their property files, planning had all of theirs, and zoning had all of theirs. And that was just a pain in the butt when people would come in and be like, I live here and I want to see everything, every permit that's ever been issued. So the filing system now, each address gets a hanging file, and within there's, it could be just one, or it could be all three: zoning, planning, and conservation commission. So now properties share one kind of file location. So I think that it's only me managing all of these projects now, but even with all my files in one system, that alone has helped so much, like as far as communication, because
You've centrally organized all the data.
It's great.
Three departments into one.
Yeah.
That's a huge help. I just want to make
Yeah.
sure that, the good thing you have going won't be interrupted by any unintended consequences of the proposed change.
I do think that with, that updated filing system, and now with the department being in one room, because from my understanding, the Concom was up at VZ before.
At one time,
Yeah, and so I think the way we've kind of set the foundation for it, because when Rebecca was still the town planner and I was the conservation agent, we were in the same office, and we would just be like, did this contractor tell you this, or did he tell you something else? And we would just talk it out. So that's the other benefit of having an employee. Volunteers have their day jobs, and they can't necessarily be there when like another employee is. So definitely helps a lot as far as communication goes.
How would you use that person? How many hours a week? And how would you spread out those hours through the week?
I cannot remember what we talked about for, I think we had looked at like 15 to 18 hours a week.
We were looking for 19 hours a week for the conservation agent, and then the town planner would be the 37.5 hours. That's our standard employee. And then based upon conversations with the individual, what would make most sense in terms of meeting dates, because they meet the first and third Monday, but then conservation meets on Wednesday. So what days would make most sense for them to overlap their schedules in order to be utilize their time more efficiently in terms of applications, et cetera.
And so that the public has access to them during the day
Yeah.
at times.
Yeah, it would be like, because right now my department's hours are like 8 when the building opens to like 3:30, but then I usually have at least one night meeting, so I'm usually here late one day, so my consistent hours are always 8 to 3:30. So I would, for this moving forward, the hours would probably change, but they would be posted like every other department's for when they're like the office hours, and for residents to come by.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have anything? No one's good? Any question? No, you're good? Okay, great. Thank you both.
Very welcome. Are you gonna get
Appreciate the
into
work you do. Keep it up.
happily?
Mike, did you have anything for CPC yet?
Well, yes, I do.
I know you guys have just
bow
been,
out.
go ahead.
On this one.
Thank you, Annie.
Thank you guys so much.
He's like the third grade teacher that passes out all this other stuff.
There's good information in here, though.
Yeah, always is.
Okay, so, one of the things that I do as being on the Conservation Commission is being also the representative to the Community Preservation Committee. And the Community Preservation Committee has appointees from total of 9 different representatives, and I'm currently serving as the chairman. And normally, by this time, usually when I'm coming to see you, I have all the projects all voted on, and we know exactly how much each one is going to be asking for. That hasn't been done yet. We're meeting next Thursday, the 15th, and we should know after that meeting which projects are going forward and how much each one is going to be requesting at town meeting. But I thought that I would give you a quick update on the projects and then also just give you a little update on where we are as far as our finances are concerned. So on that finance page, you'll see that, after at the annual town meeting in May, we will allocate the fiscal year '23 funds, which you'll see down below the fiscal year '23 statistics. So we collected locally $447,536. The state matched that at 44.6% for $199.71, and so then we've got a total of $647,327 to allocate at town meeting. So once we do those allocations, you'll see over there what the balances will be, and I won't read those numbers, but you can see them. And we've got a total of $3.2 million in the total CPA funds. Each one, the open space, the historic preservation, and the community housing portions are set aside, so they get 10% of whatever we collect between the state and locally each year. 10% of it gets put in there, and then the remainder goes into the general fund. From the general fund, we can fund any of those 3 projects in any of those 3 areas: open space, historic, or community housing, and also recreation. Recreation only differs in that it doesn't get its own 10% set aside. Also coming out of the general fund are admin costs. Typically, we are setting aside about $30,000 a year at town meeting for admin, but we often come, some years we don't spend anything, and some years we do, just depend what else is going on. We can use that to pay for legal fees, appraisals, other project-related costs. So as I said, I think we're in very good shape going into the projects. Even with the state matches going down, we still scored, the 23rd highest in the state of 44.6%, which is pretty good. A lot of the last year, the legislature did not add extra money, and so that's why the last 2 or 3 years they've added extra money from the budget that was not spent, and they decided not to do it this year. So last year we had we had received somewhere in the 62% match, but unfortunately this year, they dropped that down for everybody, and we ended up with 44.6%. But, you know, it still helps us out quite a bit. So, the projects, you see the list there, and then I gave you a sheet with the different projects. So we've got 8 project proposals submitted this year, and we met with all the project proponents once already, and we had them go through their proposals, and we found that all 8 of them do qualify for CPA funds. So really the last part, on February 15th, we will be hearing from each proponent on any questions that were raised that we were going to be providing an answer at that meeting. So we have a few questions on some of these, and we may be changing some of the final dollar amounts for the project once we get those questions answered. And then we'll vote on each one of the 8 for going forward at town meeting. And then once we do that, as I say, we'll put warrant articles in and get the selectmen to approve the warrant articles, and then they go to town meeting for a vote. So the projects this year are pretty diverse. We've got one project for community garden design phase. The old dog park that's down at the Pines is pretty much sitting there unused. It's a fenced-in little 9,000 square foot or so parcel that we can perhaps design for a change it from a dog park to a community garden. And hopefully that will promote gardening as a recreational activity, and also promote community education and even beautify the Pines in some way. The next project is getting Washington Hall on the National Historic Registry. We've spent a lot of CPA money, about $500,000 on restoring that building with CPA funds, and the Coalition for CPA recommends whenever you do that, that we get it on the National Historic Registry, so that's going to be done. The next one is some shade and seating at the Pines. There's been a lot of activity at the Pines with some of the new things that are down there between the playground and upcoming things that were voted last year for the splash pad. Rebecca was able to get design for putting some more seating and shade there to avoid sitting in the sun. The next project is taking care of some historic documents, specifically the books and books and books of town reports that the town clerk is in charge of maintaining. So her plan is to have those scanned in and make them available for both her staff, town employees, and also the public to be able to search them for historic or whatever reason people want to do that.
Does that project, it includes the cost of paying somebody to do the scanning work?
Yes.
Not just the equipment?
Right now, she came in with that and had the cost of scanning, but we aren't sure if it what else it included, so that's why, I don't know, it may increase or decrease based on.
But that's the idea.
Yep. The next one is a purchase of a 17-acre parcel at 114 Center Street. The idea with this one is to, this abuts the 150 Center Street, so it would allow us to use it for habitat mitigation. If the town is going to move forward with developing anything at 150 Center Street, we're going to need some new space to be able to claim the mitigation for habitat that will be taken away by developing 150 Center Street. Also, it is already a habitat area itself and helps to protect the aquifer over there. So it could be an interesting purchase. The Pines parking enhancements are with all of the new additions to the Pines. Parking can be tight down there when multiple activities are going on. So what this project is going to do is enhance the parking down at the Pines and also make a handicapped accessible access from Town Hall parking down to the Pines to increase the total parking for the Pines. And the final one is Shanahan Field parking. This was one that was put forward last year and was not voted at town meeting. Rebecca was charged to come back with more information on this one, so she did that. And so, again, this is moving forward to hopefully take care of the parking situation, take care of the dangerous street traffic situation that exists over there at Shanahan Field. So those are the 8 projects. As I say, I apologize that I can't give you numbers, but what I can do is I can update this sheet when we vote the final numbers, and I can give it to you for review. And then if you have any other questions, I'm happy to come back if you need me to.
Could we get a description of each, a summary? I mean, there's a lot of money in here, I know
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yes.
Because we do
Well, now-
vote on this.
Now we have, with you know, professionals here, I think we're better able to look at some of the problems. You know, I mean, the Shanahan Field parking one is an expensive project, but we are not going to get any money to fix that problem. It's an ongoing problem. It's only getting worse with extra use of that field. Same thing with the Pines. You know, the more we use these things, and there's no other funding for fixing some of these things. So, you know, access to the Pines from out here, it's a great place to park out in the parking lot to avoid driving into the Pines, but on the other hand, there's no safe way to walk down to there. So, you know, is it going to stay that way forever? No. But it's not an inexpensive thing to fix, and these kind of things fit into what CPA money was designed to fix. So, you know, yes, many of these are expensive, but they're going to solve problems that won't get solved without using CPA funds.
Mike, I think you just skipped over the Perry Park.
Oh,
Can
I'm
you just-
sorry.
No, that's okay.
Yes, right, the Perry Park. This one is, again, another design phase. There's been a lot of ideas for revitalizing Perry Park. I know I took a walk out there last week, and it's kind of a mess. And so what this is going to do is pay for a landscape architect to come in and design changes to improve Perry Park and make it as beautiful as it ever was and used to be, because it's been pretty neglected over the last 10 to 15 years.
I have a quick question for you. The
Sure.
balance with the fiscal year '23 funds allocated, so that is after the money that we took in for fiscal year '23. And is that after the projects that are ongoing now? So this would be the amount of money we have available?
Yes.
Okay.
Those monies do not include, once we vote a project, it gets taken out of what's available.
I just wanted to confirm, so
Yes.
that way that we have the $3.2 million.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions?
Yes.
Go right ahead, Jim.
As you know, one of my pet peeves is the community housing. Why are we collecting money for that? Because nothing's ever going to happen. There's no excuse for this.
I agree with you as far as, unfortunately, community housing is the hardest thing to use CPA funds for. I read a study on statewide use of CPA funds for community housing, and we are not the only ones in this position. Every city and town that has CPA has a problem spending CPA funds to solve housing. That's not to say it isn't possible, because there are many towns, I would say 10% of the towns that have CPA have done good projects with CPA money to solve some of the housing crisis. So I think what we need to do is with the aid of our town administrator and our town planner, is look at what have other towns done that we can do. Because I think, we've kind of, we've kind of approached it with a few different projects, but I don't think we've ever really looked at some other successful projects and say, how can we replicate them here in Groveland? So I think that's got to be a goal of the CPC for the next year, so that we can come in here in 2025 and present a useful housing.
Well, we had a
project.
plan. We had a plan, and the people in the back, they were going to help implement it.
Yes.
So what happened to that?
Well, unfortunately,
If I may, that was,
go ahead, Rebecca.
that was one of the projects I put forward as part of the buy down program, and having the Groveland Housing Authority help with the affirmative fair action plan and the lottery that would be necessary in order to get those units to be counted to our subsidized housing inventory. So, to be honest with you, to be 100% completely honest with you, it's capacity. There's just not enough hours in the day to get it done. It's a very heavy lift to work on affordable housing type projects, because it
agree.
requires that tedious checking off, going to make sure that you're following the laws, submitting a fair action plan to the state, getting them to approve it, making sure that you're putting in a deed rider that goes with the unit to make sure that you preserve the affordability of the house moving forward. So we stalled a little bit, because then there was also a change and transition with the director. So we used to have Joe Hart, who was the director of the Haverhill Housing Authority, who also did the Groveland Housing Authority. He is no longer there. We now have a new director. The amount of monies that the Haverhill Housing Authority has been able to tap into recently is a lot, and so they have multiple housing developments going on in Haverhill, so it's been very hard to get them to focus on Groveland. It's not to say we haven't had productive conversations and we're moving in that direction. It's just to say that it's been harder to get them to focus because they have capacity issues as well. But we are moving forward still with that project. The monies will not go unspent in terms of creating that affordable housing, and we actually just had a really good conversation with a private developer looking to do affordable housing, and next CPC application will be putting together a private collaborative partnership with the town to create affordable housing, senior housing, in collaboration, hopefully with Bethany Homes and Nichols Village, in order to provide additional housing options, as well as putting together a program for home improvement aspects for individuals who are income eligible, to help them stay in their homes and to alter their homes in order to provide for better quality of life. So it's just been harder, because those types of programs, it's easier than just hiring a contractor and having them build something. You actually have to stay with the project throughout its entirety, and you have to be very specific about what it is that you're trying to accomplish, and it's
But we
been very
don't have the
difficult.
capacity to support this. So why don't we cut the funding down to 1%?
You can't, because we can't, you can't,
Nothing's happening with this money. I'm tired of it.
no, but I mean, you can't cut only community housing.
I don't care. Okay? I think it's time that I get my last tax bill, which I came out of my chair on, and then I look at that 10%. And what I look at is, I've been in this town for almost 14 years, and I have never benefited one penny out of that. I don't need affordable housing, but people do, okay? Or I don't care if someone stands in the corner of the old gas station and has $50 bills in their hand. I want to see that money move. If we can't do it, drop it, because there's no way we have the time to do this. So let's not, so what do? We've already got an overstressed town operational budget. Now we're going to throw this is a full-time job, you know.
Well, we were talking about trying to capitalize on that as part of our budget preparations with hiring a CPC administrator, as I was doing as a town planner, and allowing that individual to take on some of those responsibilities that would allow them to solely focus on CPC projects in addition to the monitoring that I do. So we were hoping to use those administrative funds. I think we were talking about setting aside $30,000 in order to hire someone specifically, not only an individual, if not an individual, a consultant who specializes in affordable housing, in order to help them with maintaining and or moving forward with those initiatives. So Mike and I have had that conversation, because we agree that that money needs to be used for affordable housing if we're going to collect it. I mean, I don't want to speak for Mike, but I think we've had a lot of conversations about trying to get additional support to make those projects happen.
And you're saying that that role could be funded through the CPC funds?
We were hoping that if...
Theoretically. We've done that before. I mean, didn't we fund parts of your job when you first became the town planner? We built it up via CPC projects, right? Through CPC funds.
So we did do that, and we were hoping, if everything worked out financially, if we could take that person, and that person would also maybe be the administrative coordinator and also help with the CPC stuff, because some of the administrative support that is necessary for the Board of Selectmen, as well as myself, it also entails economic development, CPC projects, monitoring, project management, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And since I'm involved in that on a day-to-day basis, having that person help provide those types of services makes a lot of sense. And then it also capitalizes on the planning, conservation, et cetera. So it just made sense to try and move in that direction, but utilize CPC funding for that specific portion to focus on the affordable housing, so the planner could free up on do the permitting stuff, focus on the CPC project management, so I can help but not necessarily get into the nitty-gritty details. So that was the ultimate goal, instead of making it project-oriented, because the issue is it can't be for like long-term maintenance, and you're just paying for somebody's salary to do a project. That doesn't make sense. We need more something long-term that's, fulfilling the actual needs of CPC in its entirety, not just, oh, we need an open space plan, do the open space plan. Oh, we need an affordable housing plan, do the affordable we need somebody to actually help implement. So that's what the goal was for long-term.
And how does the limit work of what you could compensate somebody out of those funds? Would it be a part-time? I know that you had around $30,000 number, but is it a part-time role? Are there parameters within the guidelines that dictate?
Not spelled out specifically. I mean, we have to, the town and the committee have to answer to, the coalition and also DOR. So if we were trying to fund a position and it didn't have anything, say we were using $100,000 a year to fund a position that only partly was working on CPA issues, DOR would not be happy with us. So
I don't think anyone's suggesting that.
Yeah.
I think that we're just trying to, in my mind, trying to qualify how many hours would it take to really have somebody available to put that housing, for instance. funds to work, and can we fund that?
Right, so, you know, I mean, if we dedicated $30,000, you know, that could probably get us 18 or 19 hours a week of somebody, which certainly would be great to not only take care of the CPC stuff, but also focus on some of these issues like housing.
There's a thought coming to, I'm trying to like build off of what you said, like, is there, there hasn't been any thought given to like a number of hours for somebody, right? You're saying like tag them with the administrative coordinator who was gonna be a part-time job. So then would you be thinking between the two, it would be a full-time position? Okay. I don't have anything else. Go ahead.
Just you know, I'm very new, so just one
Sure.
question from my perspective, but the way this money, especially the non-committed funds are stored, is there a way to collect interest off these funds from year to year, or are there regulations that prevent that? Oh, sorry.
Yes. We do collect interest. A lot of it is invested.
Okay, so you can invest this,
Yes.
and a large percentage is invested?
Yes.
Okay, so there's a return.
And I think Michelle, our treasurer, is presenting tonight as well, so she would have more information
Okay,
on that too.
thank you. Thank you.
As far as the Pines parking enhancements and the ramp that would go down there, or whatever it would be.
Right.
Are there any funds from, say, ADA that you could source to help pay for that, as it would benefit the Americans with disabilities?
Potentially, you know, by voting for something like this, it enables us, once we've got the funds committed, to then go after grants that require matching funds. So we've done this many times in the past where, you know, once we commit to something, say we're purchasing a property, then we can go look for state funds or grants that require a match, and the CPA funds can be a match. So I would imagine that we can do the same thing for this one.
Great. Getting back to the top one, do you have a garden? What do you grow?
Well, I can't say that I do it. My wife does it all. So, but things like tomatoes, kale, peppers, those do the best.
Yeah, me too. Zucchini, summer
Yeah,
squash,
zucchini.
cucumbers, love it all. String beans.
Yes.
Nothing like fresh broccoli. You just cut off the stalk and you know, it's great. Kids love it. I would be interested in doing that, but have you thought, is that the best place? I mean, if I've got these nice tomatoes and I'm about to pick them, and all of a sudden Sarah Ruth is playing in that softball field, and every ball she hits in batting practice flies over that fence and smashes my tomato plants and crushes my zucchini plants. I know my kids do it. I just go, you know, I lose my mind, because what are you doing? So has there been any thought to a great idea, maybe not the best location?
Well, I know that they surveyed the town, and one of the other reasons why there were a couple of reasons why that location was chosen. One is because it's sitting there, it's already fenced in. You know, I think perhaps since it's next to the ball field, they may have to increase the height of the fence, but also because it's close to several housing over on the other side of Town Hall, there's a concentration of housing. Also across the street from Town Hall, another section there that's a large rental. So the biggest amount of rental properties are actually within a quarter mile of that site. So that was why it was chosen to be useful. But, I think during the design phase is when issues like that are going to have to be looked at closely and say, first of all, again, is it the most, best place to have it? But also, what other mitigations are going to have to be taken care of when if it actually goes forward to be built? Things like, conservation issues with it being right next to the river, within the River Protection Act, and then next to the ball fields. Is the ground contaminated? I think, it probably needs to use raised beds with new soil brought in. So those are some of the things they're going to have to address.
Now, if we had a summer like we did 2 summers ago, we had no rain at all, how would you water that garden?
Yes, so there is water down there, and so that's another issue. So I know that they're planning on having the water line extended over there so they can hand water if necessary.
Now, would there be a fee, or how would somebody like me say, hey, I wanna grow tomatoes there?
Yes. Yes, so, that's a possibility. We can charge residents a fee. We can charge non-residents a higher fee. And, hopefully there would be some group that kind of forms. I know I was up in Portland, Maine, looking at some of their community gardens, and they've done amazing things up there. And that's what they've done is the people, the city started, and then the people formed groups and actually took over managing and caring for the community garden space. So hopefully, that would happen here too.
Great. Thanks, Mike.
Sure.
Appreciate all you do as well.
Everyone's all set? Actually, I forgot Alex is online, so I didn't know if he had anything. I forgot to mention that he was in on Zoom, but I guess he's all set.
Can he hear us?
He was there.
Alex?
He's not there anymore.
He's not there anymore? Okay.
We ignored him for so long, he left.
It just popped up his name, and I was like,
He
oh.
was there. I put him in the minutes
Yeah, okay.
as present.
He's your CPA representative to the CPC, so he should know all of this stuff already.
Great.
I like the idea of the community garden. Not that I have anything against any of the other
It's
ones.
well fertilized, I can assure you.
That's what I said to Melissa.
Phew.
Okay,
Not the
great. Thank you
teenagers.
so much.
Okay,
Mike.
thank you.
Mike?
Thanks, Mike.
Steve, you're up. Thank you for coming in.
First time.
No,
Thank you
that's
for your
okay.
patience.
Is it? No, you came last year. No?
No.
Oh, welcome.
What's a new position, so.
He's taking on a big new role.
I don't know.
So I will just preface the conversation, if I may.
No.
Per the chair's approval, I just wanted to say that, so with recent changes that we've made in terms of the organization of Town Hall, we've created a building and facilities division, and Steve has been with us for about 5 years now and has grown in his position in more ways than one, and has really stepped above and beyond what has been requested of him since he started in terms of his duties. So when we were doing more in Town Hall and doing a lot of the different renovations that we were able to do, just simple things that were already budgeted for, but we just didn't get a chance to do them, such as the carpet and some of the other things, Steve stepped up and he literally hit the ground running. So I saw that as an opportunity to work with Steve in the highway department, and create that building and facilities division, and Steve was the perfect guy for the job. So he stepped up and he took on the role, and I've really been leaning on him for a lot in terms of procurement, contacting contractors, organizing work orders, starting to do a more work order-oriented system, making sure that we're getting timing, what priority, what's not priority, exploring capital improvements that need to happen, being more proactive with those capital improvements. He's been taking care of the utilities in all of our facilities now, so he's been monitoring the bills. He's already been like, wait, no, that's sales tax. We can't have that. So he's already saved us a bunch of money by making sure that little things like that don't slip through the cracks. So I thought this was a great opportunity to have him, since he helped me put together the municipal building budget, to come before the finance board and kind of see exactly what the management side of things are, because he's taken on that responsibility and has done an amazing job. So I wanted to make sure that the finance board had an opportunity to hear from him specifically on the utilities budget, the supplies and materials budget, and the repairs budget, to see exactly, what he's been working on and what he's proposing for the upcoming fiscal year.
Absolutely.
Heck of an introduction there, Steve. You better live up.
I was just thinking the same thing.
I run pretty frugal. You know, a lot of repairs are made with stuff on hand. It's rather amazing that we did what we did in the last 5 years with our repairs and maintenance budget. 3 boilers, multiple AC units, not including the big system in Town Hall, but we did South Station. We did 2 in the front of 3 in the front of PD. We did 3 in the back of PD of these mini splits. So we run pretty lean, and I noticed in previous years we have a little left over at the end of the year, so we level funded, and I wouldn't touch the utilities. So our natural gas is 4 of our 6 accounts are supplier and delivery system. So National Grid's our delivery, and these other guys are our supplier. Well, our original contract expires, I think, October 31st this year, and before it sold, the guy called me up and says, hey, you want to look around for rates? So I said, sure, send me some rates. So we were at 57 or 8 cents per therm, and his cheapest one that he could find was $1.22. So there's something big is going to happen. So I told him, just keep me in the loop. You see something starting to go down, send me another quote. So that was the only concern I have, is the utilities line. So when you're looking at the numbers, that's the big thing that I have to just keep your eye on.
Should we put half these lights out now?
Some buildings only run half the lights, so I do like that. But yeah, I rarely answer salesmen, and I don't know, 2 months ago, about 2 months, a janitorial supply guy introduced himself. So I said, shoot me some numbers. Everything was less than 50% of what we've been paying for it for years. So that was, I couldn't believe it. I went into Rebecca and I'm like, you'll never believe this.
What kind of supplies?
Paper towels, toilet paper, trash bags, mop heads. Basically everything I use is now transferring from Quill to Top Notch Supply, and they're local. You order 300, they're free delivery, and it's like 2 days, 2 to 3 days, you get whatever you order. And that's basically all I have for a first time around. Any questions?
No, I was about to ask if you guys had a broker for utilities, because that can be very helpful
Yeah.
in trying to negotiate that supplier
Yeah.
aspect.
The one that we had sold, they just got out of it.
Yep.
And I'm not sure how the contracts work, but they automatically raised it to 67 cents a therm for this year to finish the contract out. And I find that's typical when, like, when they sell student loans, your student loan doesn't stay the same, it goes up. You know, they'll increase it 1%, at least 1. So that's kind of what happened with this sale. So we'll see what happens, probably August.
Yeah.
I'll start getting new numbers and then consult with whoever needs to know. I'm a little worried about it. That's a lot of the Ukraine business is why our natural gas is going crazy.
Are all the buildings are on natural gas?
Yes. So I applied for the Mass Save rebates for the library, and as you go through the forms, there's a lot of questioning of what you're doing with this system. Are you adding on to something? Are you using it in conjunction with something? So I answered the questions, and it's like, it's primarily AC. Over here, this year I turned the boiler on November 1st, because those are our new rates. The rates change for November through October 31st. And we ran primarily the new split system. And it's said to be cheaper, and I think it is a lot, running a Groveland Electric as opposed to running the high rates from National Grid. Our electric's pretty good. But that was the thing, and I was going to try and shut them off, or shut the boiler down, weather depending, on March 1st. Now, that's a real iffy one. March can be 0, March can be 62. So I don't want to run 100% these when it's below 35 degrees. We did it a couple days this year in late October, but not anything like it is outside now. So that was, National Grid really wants you to go all electric. They don't want you running natural gas anymore. And so this is quite a thing that we got with this system. We had a lot of little issues starting it up, but it's running pretty good now in season. So.
I'll just say that, I mean, I just was so surprised when you said this is the first time that I've been here, because I guess it's the first time that you've maybe formally sat down and had this conversation with us, but you're always here. Whenever I'm here in the town hall, you're here, and the evidence of you is everywhere, because, I mean, this room has completely transformed. The town, all around town just feels kept and nice and clean, and you're always buzzing around, and you're always so friendly, and I just appreciate you so much, Steve.
Thank you very much. I'm a little picky.
And then
but-
to hear, Rebecca's side of the story just was. So we appreciate that.
I don't like walking into a public building and have the doors all covered with smudges, or you go in the bathroom and it's a mess. Like, it's just, you keep it nice.
Well, it gives everybody a sense of pride, and that's
Yeah.
really important to the
Oh, yeah.
employees and the residents.
I don't want my mom coming in here and seeing a mess,
Does she live in Groveland?
No.
Not that I want to lose you, but you need a job at Fenway Park. But anyways, are these programmable? Like, I have, I can program my thermostat at home to say, at 8 o'clock, everybody's gone. Turn it down to 50. At 2 o'clock, bring it back up to 68 because people are going to be coming home about 3. At bedtime, it goes down.
Yeah.
So that I'm trying as best as I can to cut down on that energy cost.
I can not remotely control it, but in the basement, it's almost like the keypad's a placebo. I can set every office to 70 degrees, and it'll keep it there, either heat or cool at the same.
Yep.
So in the daytime it would cool a little bit, in the nighttime it would heat a little bit, but we don't have the programmable part of it yet, and it comes with a remember what he called that? It was like, it was a remote app, so I could like have it on my phone. And it's like, oh, select board rooms at 80 degrees, let's turn the AC on a little bit. Or they can be live on the wall, because if you give people the opportunity, they'll run it up to 80 if they want, or run the AC at 64, and that's not okay to me.
Right, that's when you put that lock box over it.
Well,
with the key and,
I've done it, and they've been ripped off. So,
well, that's what we got cameras now, so.
Yeah.
We send the film right over to Chief Gillen, and
Yeah.
boom, we make an arrest, slap
Yeah.
that guy in cuffs,
Well-
and he never does that again.
there was one I put on, and it was immediately removed. I was like, oh, really? But it's back on, it's been fine.
Now, you said that the broker we had retired or something in the middle of the contract?
Right at the end of, right before the sale, he called me and asked me if he wanted to, or if I wanted him to send the new rates. So I said, sure, send them over. So he's still out there. It's just the company that he works for no longer does our account. And I don't know if they just completely got out of the business or folded or what, but it's a new company, and I'm fairly certain that he's pitching for them. But either way, we could get different rates. It's not locked in with just one provider. I can't even remember the name because I've only done it twice with the new guy.
Yeah, they'll source a bunch of providers and try to get you the best rate is what they do, the brokers.
Yeah, it's because they want you.
Yeah, oh, of course,
and-
because they're making money on it, believe
Yeah,
me.
so, I don't know, I think Denise had us locked in for at least 3 years. And it might have been up, in the interim between Denise and Rebecca coming on as the town administrator, because the timing didn't make sense for 3 years to be up in October of '24. So that would mean October '21, it's like Denise signing a contract for 3 years on the way out the door. I don't know if that happened. I think it might have just lagged, and then Kevin might have signed off on it for the remainder, or, you know, because like, on an interim like that, I could totally see somebody, you know, just checking the box. It's like, oh, we got contract for this, yeah, got to do that, here you go. So I wasn't involved in the finance side of anything at all back then, like,
Just inherited it.
yeah, like it started with the pandemic, and then Denise was gone. I was like, well, I gotta buy paper towels, toilet paper, like, and then I was given access, and then it slowly built after that of, you know, getting the supplies and stuff, and then now we're here.
So, given your experience, 5 years in the town, you've fixed some things here and there, give me your top 3 things in this town that, you know, not broken toilet, but something big, a roof, a structure that within the next 5 years is going to need some serious attention, if not complete replacement. I'm talking items that are going to exceed, you know, $50,000, $100,000.
We'll go right over $1 million, and all 3 roofs,
All 3
all
roofs.
fascia, all soffits, the vents, the big circle vents that are up on the peaks, on all the corners of the buildings. I am currently working with a guy, Garland Industries, and that's their specialty, and they're on the bid list, so he's given me numbers. I've been working with Rebecca, so when it's gonna be a bond, definitely. But
These 3.
these 3. And South Station needs a little help too, but it's nowhere near this. Their roof's good, but their facade and structure has got some issues that we have to have looked at. But these 3 buildings, we're there. Like, we got over 20 years on the roof as it is with the shingles, and they're starting to peel. We get good windstorms, and they do come off. And I have some in the basement, and I go up and nail on another one, because it happens at the library. I'll get a call that it's raining in the kitchen, and there's a spot that just, the shingles come off over there, and I've been putting them back on, and, you know, the last storm, we made it good over there, but not over here. We had multiple leaks in this building with the last, the 18 inches of snow and then 3 inches of rain or whatever it was. these roofs just couldn't handle it. And I suspect the last contractor only did 1 row of ice and water shield instead of 2. So only 3 feet up the roof with the ice and water instead of 6, which is what I would definitely do. So these 3 buildings, I don't really have well, South Station, it's not gonna be anything like this. That I don't even know if that would go out for a bid over 10,000. Oh, our electrical panels. They're
Out of code.
they're out of business for a reason. The people, Federal Pacific. We really found this out when Chief Gillen asked about replacing the generator. That's a big one too. And I had 3 quotes for the generator, just 3 guys out of an internet search locally. And the guy came in, he goes, I don't know if I can do this. And I was like, why? And he goes, you have Federal Pacific breaker panels, and they're known for failing, and that's why their business is under. So ours right now work. I have questioned it before when I run the floor buffer. It's a 20 amp buffer, and I can plug it in the hallway, and if it starts to stick, it starts pulling all 20 amps on a 15 amp line, and then it doesn't pop the breaker. So that's a problem. But all 3 buildings have Federal Pacific, except PD has a couple of new ones. When they redid the dispatch office, I think Daniels did it, but they put in a new panel upstairs in the closet, and then a new sub panel in dispatch. So those are good, but the rest of them, all of them, and it's a horrendously big project to do that. Not quite sure if that'd be going out to bond, but it's probably gonna be there. Yeah, so those. The generator's a different story. I mean, it's maintained, twice a year, every year. It's got 800 hours on it, which isn't much, but it's more the age. But I'm thinking the roofs and the electrical panels are a pretty big deal.
Those are your priorities 1 and 2.
I mean, if I had the money now, I'd probably do the electric panels first,
Yeah.
because it doesn't leak every time we rain in this building. The front of the library.
If it doesn't leak in this building, we're all good.
Well,
If it leaked in this building, it would be a priority.
yeah, the front of the library, the vestibule, I have a quote coming in to just Band-Aid it until we can get the project moving. Just because the last nor'easter we had, all the panels came down from the ceiling in the entryway, and not a ton of water, but it's a mess. But that's gonna get a Band-Aid until we can get the big capital project going.
And would you go again with the asphalt, or would you
It's gonna, the
go
quotes are
with
gonna be.
metal or PVC?
Quotes are gonna be for metal and a 40-year life expectancy.
40-year life with metal?
Yeah.
I thought they were lifetime.
I'm not sure, it might be 40 years warranted or guaranteed, but that's their pitch is they're gonna give you 40 years on it.
40, you might be gone, but I'm still gonna be around in 40 years. I don't want it to leak. They'll blame me.
It
These
might be
must all
around.
be
I won't-
capital plan.
Yes, I think, yes, and I think that the other thing that's worth noting is that a lot of the times with Bagnell Elementary School, we don't necessarily know exactly what capital improvements are needed within the building. So we've been slowly trying to integrate Steve more in those conversations so that when things are happening, if we're requesting that the doors be fixed, he's working with them and getting the contractor and trying to move that process along, because the money is coming from the town in order to make those repairs on the facility, but the facility manager and the coordinator over there are kind of the ones that are also coordinating the effort. So we've been trying to find a better way of forming that relationship and making sure that decisions are being made that impact the town's finances a little bit more are out in the open and that we kind of understand who's responsible for what and that, you know, things aren't going for a long period of time. So Steve's also been working on that as well. And so those ones are in the capital plan, but not really well detailed, like more of our town side things, which were more detailed in the most recent plan. So we would like to work on those projects as well and making sure that we clearly understand that. And Steve started to work with both Jonathan Seymour as well as Bob Danforth in putting that together. But I think that's going to be a little bit more of a slower transition. But some of those projects are noted within the capital plan.
Thank you, appreciate everything you do around town.
All right.
And I know I get comments constantly when I'm down there for baseball games that you guys got the cleanest bathrooms in town.
Yeah.
In the whole state maybe for a,
Well,
you know, park.
When I traveled with my son around over to Rowley or wherever we went, Donahue Field, I never used the bathrooms there. So we got the best ones, so that's a very, very nice thing to have at the Pines. So we'll keep it up.
Can I ask one thing?
Yeah, go right ahead.
How smart are these buildings? Do they have electronic control systems, SCADA systems, or are they all manual?
They're basically manual
Okay.
at this point. So the app will be something that I or Rebecca could have
Sure.
on a desktop or on a phone, and you'll be alerted if, you know, temperature drops below something on the weekend, but you'd be able to program it to drop 5 degrees.
Yep.
And the other buildings, fire, their AC is programmable. But the thing with the heat in here, they all run at line voltage at 120 volts. They're not the low voltage like you have in your house. So there's not much you can do with that. It has to be this antiquated, you can get a brand new one and it looks like it's from the mid-70s. And that's because it runs on line voltage, so we can't do much with that unless we upgrade the whole, you know, we'd have to run new lines and not entirely sure how that works. That would be a Daniels Electric
Sure.
thing, but I mean, we could do it at some point.
Have you,
But I'd like to.
have you done energy audits for these buildings at all? Does that help in terms of trying to get grant money? Maybe, so you can compare.
I have not.
That's something, if
but
you're ever
that's-
interested, reach out, I'll help.
That's a good idea,
Think
though,
might
because
help.
we had I'm curious to see this when it comes in. Last night, we had an infrared scan of the roof, and that was more to find out how much of it's rotten, because in 2015, I guess I wasn't working here, but we hired somebody to shovel the roof, and they tore the membrane. So the water infiltrated between the current roof and the roof that's underneath it on the membrane, and I couldn't for the life of me figure out why that was leaking. And the cut was over here.
Right.
So that scan I think it'll be like you would think it would be, with red and orange and yellow on the
Yeah,
roof.
yeah, sure.
But an audit would be something that we could, you know, look into, because it hasn't been done as far as I know at all in any of them.
It can also maybe help if you just, you know the square footage, you know how much total power you're using per
Yeah.
month, and you know how much gas you're using per month. You can kind of normalize that over a year. That's
Yeah.
UI. You can compare to other buildings and other
Yeah.
municipalities to see where you stand.
Yeah, I mean, the buildings that are open 24/7 PD, I mean, there's always people in there. Utilities are always getting used, so their bills are much different than
Sure.
Town Hall. And Town Hall is like much different than the library. You know, that would be the lowest. This is in the middle, and they're high because they have much more equipment over there.
Right.
You know, compressors that run, the gear washers in the fire hall, stuff that draws much more than we do. But the audit, that would be something to look
Good
into.
help. It's a tricky building too. It's got a lot of thermal mass. It's almost like a school.
Yeah,
Those set points sometimes don't do what you think.
Right.
When you move them up and down
Yeah.
it's- if you have a good baseline, right, you can compare your changes, that's.
once
super
you heat it up, it stays warm.
Right.
I mean, the weird thing about over next door is the boilers in the basement, everything is contained in this concrete box, and I don't even turn the heat on in booking. Ever since I started having control, I turned it off. It can be 0 degrees outside, that floor is 90 degrees, like, just because the boilers are directly under it, it's just radiant heat. So why bother pumping more in there? But that stays warm for probably 3 weeks after I turn the boilers off. It's amazing,
It's incredible.
but it's also concrete like this thick.
Sure.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yep.
Good idea.
All right, great. Thanks so much,
All set?
Steve. Yeah.
All right,
Good job.
thank
Thank you for coming in, and we
Yeah.
appreciate your initiative to want to come before the board.
Yeah, well, I live and work here, I want to know what's going on too. And, yeah, all right.
All right.
Thank you.
Have a good night, Steve.
Yeah, you want to have Michelle come? I don't know. What did- 17.
I'll do it.
I have my binder in the car. It's like, oh yeah, I gotta remember it. And then I flew out of the car.
Yeah.
Hopefully she needs 5 minutes and I can say, go. No, guess not.
Hi, Michelle, how are you? Good, how are you? Good. Thank you for coming in. So we just wanted, obviously, you've been through this process before. You know most of the members. Mark is our newest member.
Hi.
And so we just wanted to have you come in, present your budget in terms of the treasurer collector's office, and give us any updates on the department that you feel are important to know.
Okay. Well, last year we hired, we had a part-time assistant treasurer collector. We made that full-time, and it made a world of difference in the office. And then we also made a change because it went full-time. Danny Albright was the assistant treasurer, and she needed more flexibility with her schedule, so we ended up going with switching Donna and Danny from the water sewer office manager to the assistant position, where she had experience anyway. She came from the city of Haverhill, working in the treasurer collector's office. So it's been great. So things have been moving smoother. Having that full-time person there, it's been, I've been able to get more of the higher end stuff done, like looking more into the investments, reconciling, and stuff like that. So it's been great. And Donna's also been taking over the more of the benefit stuff too, so that's taken that off my plate as well, which has been great. And I think that's it for this year, I guess.
Okay.
With that said, my budget, I've had some minor increases, starting with Donna was hired as the office manager, which was at a higher rate than what the assistant was getting before. She took on the assistant treasurer collector job, hoping to get that salary this year. So that's why hers is higher than the 2% that we all got. And then, there's minor increases with online payments. A lot of people are paying online now, and we get charged a fee for every online payment. So it's great that they're paying online. It just increases our fees a little. I didn't have that budgeted for last year. That also includes fire burn permits that were put online last year, as well as the clerk stuff. So that all gets pooled in together with those fees. It's like $25 per transaction for a person, so it's not a lot.
So if you're getting charged the fee, and if I go online and pay, if I use a credit card, I also get charged
Yes.
a fee.
You get,
You
the
get the
fee is for the credit
credit
card
card
companies,
processing.
not for City Hall systems.
Okay.
But so, they just charge us 25 cents, doesn't matter. You don't get a charge fee if you use your checking account.
Your checking account, right?
Yep. So as long as you use your checking, you don't get a fee. We get a fee for that. but not you. So that increased a little bit. The payroll fees also increased. I didn't account for last year the W-2s, which they charge us per W-2. It's like almost $800. It depends on how many employees. It's, I have this number off the top of my head. It's in my budget.
770 is what you had.
Yeah, $770, so, for last year. Per employee, you get charged, there's a fee, and then there's a fee to process, a $50 fee to process. So, I wanted to increase that to include that fee and any changes if we hire new employees, if we have to do an extra payroll, if we let someone go, there's a different fee for that. Because I went over on that last year. And then, as always, I'm always trying to increase the tax title account. Last year, it was one of my goals to get a better handle on all the ones that we have in tax title. Most of them go back to 2001, 2002. A lot of them are land of low value. With that said, anything you try to do with tax title cost a fee. So just to talk to the attorney cost a fee. Some of them were taken not correctly, so I have to disclaim them and retake them. So there's a fee adjusted to that. It's like $105 for any time you have to take it out of tax title, then you put it back in. It's an additional filing fee. So Rebecca's been kind enough to let me use some of the money from her legal line, but it always goes over. So I'd like to slowly increase that over time, and obviously stop when we don't need it anymore. Because there's still a lot of work to do with that. And I think that's it.
I will say that one of the reasons that we don't increase the tax title account, although Michelle is definitely right, we should be increasing it slowly, is because it's more like the snow and ice budget, it can fall in a deficit legally under Massachusetts general law. So we are allowed to deficit spend. So if we find ourselves in that situation, we can make up for it for free cash and anything that falls below. So I agree with Michelle that we should slowly be increasing that anyway, just like we should be for snow and ice, but it's one of those things where when push comes to shove, when we know we're able to deficit spend it, it kind of gives us that cushion where we're like, maybe we could use it elsewhere in the budget. And then the other thing that I know that when we met with Michelle, both Ellen and myself, we were talking about trying to hire a consultant to help with the tax bills, and we do that all in-house right now, and Michelle can speak more to this, but it's a very tedious process. We usually use like the work-off volunteer, but it's still not enough to help with the volume. So between Donna and Michelle and the senior work-off individual, then Julie will help, Ellen will help, I'll help, Annie will help. So it becomes like an all hands on deck kind of thing. And it's a lot of time and hours. So it makes sense when we took a look at the postage and the consulting line item to see whether or not we could get quotes for putting that out. And it seems like it would actually be a savings for us, and it would alleviate a lot of the time burdens and trying to find people to pitch in and help. So I don't know if Michelle wants to speak more to that.
Yeah, I forgot about that one. That was the most important one, actually. So I got a quote from City Hall Systems to outsource the bills. It's a tedious, and it takes away, how many hours?
So right now you're printing them, stuffing them?
I'm printing them, stuffing them, and mailing them. Yep, and so it's, like she said, it's a hands-on deck, and it takes time away from the office. And the senior work-offs, ladies are great. I have one dedicated person that will come in and help me. Alyssa's been doing great trying to get that more organized, so she probably has more people now, but last year that wasn't the case. It was just the person I knew. But it takes 6 to 10 hours just to, stuff them. It takes about an hour to print them. And then stamping them takes probably an hour. So it is a time suck for all of us to do that. And City Hall Systems, they'll do it for 40 cents per bill. And we'll save on the postage because they'll bulk it all together where I have to pay individual rates. they will bulk it and get a discounted rate. So we'll save money in the postage, we'll save money in time. I wrote down numbers of this. So, and then the cost of paper and envelopes, so I'm able to decrease postage a little bit and my office expenses to make up that difference. So it wasn't adding any money to my line item to do that, it was just switching around some of those things, because it cost me, I did just write it down. It was $1,000 for the envelopes for the year and about $400 for the paper, because you have to have special paper to print them.
And then the other thing I wanted to mention too is that, you know, Michelle's done an excellent job of working with Harper's payroll system. So now we have Payroll Forward, I think it's called. And so that allows everybody to access all of their information on like an application on their phone. We never had anything like that. So I know that with the union negotiations, we started talking about accruals. So Michelle and her team were able to get all of that information into Harper's. And so they did everybody here at Town Hall. And that has been a game changer. So even if you didn't want a printed W-2, although you have to, that we found out by law, you are able to view all of that information on that application on your phone. So that can make it a lot easier for people, and it also gives you an opportunity to reconcile your own time and your accrual basis for vacation time, sick time, et cetera. And that was all due to Michelle's work in getting that done, because I know even as an employee myself, it's really nice to just be able to log onto the app and not wait for the pay stub or you know, print a pay stub that I'm just going to throw in a file or throw in the trash. So I think it's been...
And turn off the option for the printed, so then if you don't want one at all, you're not paying for them to get one they're going to throw away.
Yes, exactly. And then it is a money-saving mechanism as well due to that very, very issue you bring forward. So that was another thing that I think that, you know, Michelle was the one to organize it, thought of it, and worked with Donna to make it happen. And that was a heavy lift, because just taking our personnel policy and figuring out how the accruals work and putting them into hours when our policy didn't reflect that. We recently changed that, which was great, but it wasn't like that originally. And it was a complicated effort, because the unions are different than the employees, and then one union's not the same as the other union. So it was a long year.
Work involved with
Yes,
that.
Exactly. And that was Michelle and Donna, and for that I will always be eternally grateful. Because it wasn't me.
I have been there, so I know that feeling. Anyone have any questions for Michelle?
No, I mean, I'll just say that even when I just read this document, I didn't know about the payroll stuff, but I got really excited about the outsourcing of the tax bills, because I think I've stuffed envelopes here before when I popped in at the right time. And, yeah, and it's just this kind of, you just know it's going to keep happening over and over and over again. So I think that's great that can be outsourced.
And I think it's helpful too, because again, like they've said, it takes away from the time to do the more important jobs
Right.
that we want them to be spending the time on,
Exactly.
as opposed to
The
stuffing
menial tasks.
stuffing an envelope and you
There's
know,
no value in that.
there's no value to that, and there's
Not at
no.
their salaries.
That's great.
All right,
That's it?
that's it. We're good. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for
Thank you very
coming
much.
in.
You're gonna go into the dentist, right?
Have a good night.
Too.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks, Michelle.
Okay, Ellen, you're on the hot seat.
This is way too complicated.
I'm giving you 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Not now.
So nothing's changing in my budget. So I thought I'd talk more about projects that I'm looking to do and things like that, unless you guys have specific questions. Our audit is done. Our tax rate was set earlier. The finance team in general has taken a huge step in just working more as a team, streamlining everything. Water and sewer got on Vadar, which is our accounting software, to do their billing. So that flows all their information through, all their payments, everything comes through very smoothly.
Was that a lift on your part or their part, or coordinating?
Their part.
It was they
It-
made that shift?
The getting it up and running was definitely all them. They did an amazing job with it too. There were no adjustments after. They got every account in exactly as it should be, so it was pretty amazing. But now, it was just great that they want to work with us and implement that and want to make it also a team approach when they don't always have to. So that's just something I'm really excited about. Other than that, I believe the projects I put in my budget were the renumbering, which is something I've been sort of plucking away at, and it's just my account numbers. The monetary numbers are all fine, but it's just kind of, it just happens with ledgers. You have different hands in them over the years, and you're adding different accounts, and we went from the planning conservation to an economic development, and now we're talking about sort of the facilities type, DPW type setup, with, facilities, highway, cemetery, so that will change things. So I'm trying to coordinate the timing. I've just kind of decided at this point, because I've been going through and sort of renumbering in a way that makes sense but still works with what we have. So it's like inactivating old accounts, adding new accounts, and it works for me. But once we start implementing, like we implemented the budget software, and then that becomes, oh, load your ledger. And it's
Right,
like,
and now you
okay, and now it's
Right.
it's going like this, and because we're adding new accounts. So I'm trying to incorporate when we initiate it with when we finally decide what to do with facilities, because I think that's our next, I shouldn't say facility, like a DPW type setup. I think that's our next biggest move as far as like numbering and like org chart. So that would change our numbering. So I'm not sure that will be done exactly at the end of next year. It kind of depends on how all that goes, but I've decided to just rebuild the whole thing. And I'm going to be working with Vadar to do that. So the budget will look interesting again that year when we do that, but then it should be smooth running forward. And there's another project that sort of fits in that with the Harper's. They can set up a sort of data dump from their system that Vadar is able to just upload, which we don't do that now. I like sit there. I mean, it doesn't take long. It's probably going to save me a half an hour, but it's still just, it's 2024, it's time to just have them all speaking to each other and streamlining so I can spend time on other things. So that timing really depends on, I just really want it to work with the changes that are happening in town. So it's kind of like a one-time shot, and then we're clean going forward as far as just numbering. And then the forecast, we got those great forecast sheets. We do forecasts, we do budget, we do look at it, you guys know that. I don't think we've ever had a formal document, that's more what I'm talking about. DOR has some great documents that I think even started the forecast for us, right? When they came in and did the management review. So I'm going to be working from that, and I have plugged a couple things away at it, but I haven't had a huge chance, so that's more of an FY25 goal for us to use next year, and I'm going to try to incorporate the new finance policy with it and just have all of that flow together so we can make sound decisions on future goals. So those are the two main ones that I put on. I have a ton of them. We did have our audit. They are going to be coming, not this Monday, but the following select board meeting. But I thought I'd just go over our management letter, because those are part of my goals. The bank rec situation has been resolved. It's done. Let's not speak of it again, no. But I think, and I wrote a memo about exactly what that was, and I hope that explained it and satisfied everybody's questions. But if you have more, I'm happy to go over it again and again and again until people are comfortable with it. The fraud risk assessment, this has been on here for years. I actually found a great document on the MMA, I don't remember which one it was, that will help us with this. And I would actually like to have this done by the end of this current year. So I can basically use that document to sit with department heads, and you just go over it, questions, and it's really based more on departments that have cash coming in and what our internal controls are along that, you know, how you're preventing people from just being like, "Root," with their $20 fee that they paid over there. Which we do have great internal controls set up. This is just a matter of documenting them and having that document on hand. So I would like to get that done this year. And the other one was another document of internal controls. They call it the COSO framework. And I did get halfway through that this year. So I do plan on finalizing that in 2024. I got halfway through it in 2023. It's just really long and really, you know, it's like if the accountant then takes this paper over here and then that person does, it's extremely detailed. So you have to like read it and reread it. And it has a ton of different sections on purchasing. So you start to overlap what you're saying and you have to remind yourself what section you're in. So it just becomes a tedious thing, but I've set time aside to make sure I finish that. And those were our only 3. So we're doing really great as far as that is concerned. And then the other things I have, I already talked about streamlining the payroll process. We implemented the VADAR remote payable, which has saved me a lot of time. So instead of people entering their bills on a spreadsheet and then handing it to me, and then I enter it into VADAR, they now have the ability to go directly into VADAR, enter their bills, and then I'm doing it more as a review process as I should be. And that has actually saved me, I want to say like a half a day to a day, depending on how many bills are coming through. So that's freed up a lot of time to start a lot of these projects.
Does everybody use it? Do you have
Yes.
holdouts?
I said I will not accept bills unless it's in there, just light department, because I can't force them to, but they said they're open to checking it out and possibly implementing it. I do want to write that also gives them the ability to run all their own reports, and our training that VADAR provided went over the report section really quickly. So one of my other goals is to just do like a more detailed user guide. They have one, but more like catered to Groveland, of the VADAR remote payable app that a department had, almost like a cheat sheet. But I wanted to have more information on the reports themselves, because I think people are getting a little frustrated with that, so that, you know, current department heads, and if we ever switch, they'll have that there to use. I do have to write an accounting procedures manual, just detailing. I'll probably focus at first on just the day-to-day stuff, so, you know, if I got hit by a bus tomorrow, somebody could come in and make sure the day-to-day operations are still running, and then hopefully you would have another accounting professional that could come in and take over after that. But I'll try to get, you know, as much detail as I can in there. We have a lot of W-9s that it looks like lots of different people have developed their own filing systems for, and they're sort of all mixed together at this point. There's no rhyme or reason on how it's filed, but we have the ability to now, we got an attachment app for VADAR, so we have the ability to now attach files directly to vendors, whether it be the bills, their W-9. So another project is to get those files cleaned up, get them scanned in, and then we can have a shredding company come and shred them.
Do you
That's
ever
further down
go
the
back
list.
through and request updated W-9s in case
That
someone
would be
changes
part of this
their
project. If
tax?
I see a address change, or, because a lot of times what will happen is the department head will put it under the old either address or tax ID, and you can tell when you get the invoice that something has changed, I'll request one. We just had that happen with like a copier company for the library. It was under,
Sometimes they
the
change
invoice was
their-
just a
you know,
different
they
name.
change their name, but
But
then
the
you
tax
just
ID was the
enter
same
it
and the
under
address was the
yeah.
same, so I requested that she give me another one, and we just made a new vendor. But going through and seeing who we have that's really old, when we do the scanning, it's kind of gonna be like organizing, updating, scanning, getting rid of the paper, you know, appropriately, and that would be part of that process. And And then I just talked to our auditors. It's very common for towns of our size and smaller that your auditors maintain. This has always been one kind of on the back of my list. We don't really maintain our own fixed assets. They maintain a spreadsheet, they calculate depreciation, which is fine. It's not an extra fee, it's part of the audit. But it makes me uncomfortable that we don't have record here of all of that, and it really should be in a ledger. And really, as I get invoices that would be a fixed asset, I should be adding to that. So I talked to her, and she did send me over their detailed spreadsheet of all of it, so that's another project, is to really go through that. I told her I'd go through it. They probably have old items on there that are fully depreciated that could come off, just make it a little cleaner. So that's another one of my projects.
And
That's
there's
it for now.
software out there that will do just fixed assets.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to Vadar because I don't know if they have one
They
themselves.
might have
or
a
if we have-
module
yeah,
within their system.
But I would want to see
but
the
there are
cost.
Also, because I use one that's outside of my accounting
Yeah, I
system.
did too in my other jobs.
Pro forma,
I use Thomson Reuters, same,
so.
they standalone kind of.
I would just want to see the cost. I'd like to get her, spreadsheet cleaned up more and then see if Vadar has an app so it would all flow together. If they don't,
It's a couple $100. Just
yeah.
buy the software every year. It's like a TurboTax fee.
okay.
Buy the software every year.
Yeah.
And it's a new one. You import your previous year,
Add
because
anything new.
depreciation laws change,
Yep.
and then you just run it through, and it gives you
Great.
all the reports, and
Does it do like streets and everything?
that's what we'd have to look at, like,
Yeah.
because I don't have,
Yeah,
I don't
that's
have
another
that
problem.
type of
It's
I don't have the same type
It's a
of.
little bit, it's always a little bit different in government,
Well,
but
like
there
any,
has to, I
again,
mean, there
like-
has to be other towns using software, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can definitely look around. That's sort of part of that project, but the first step would be to clean it up, because again, don't want to be in a position where I'm putting a bunch of old stuff in there that needs to be cleaned up. I want to get a good starting point. Then we can, start looking into software and getting it in there. But that's it for now.
Right. Does anyone have questions for Ellen? Straightforward budget.
And I have just one question. So a couple of years ago, there was a lot of turnover, and then we had the temp in the treasurer's office, and then we were having a lot of conversations about reconciling, who's reconciling to who, how that turnaround is going, how far behind, how up to date, and
You're completely up to date and have been for a while now.
well, that's what I said. Now that you've got stability, that you've
Yes.
got people, and you've
And that's how we were able to
fixed those
get this tax rate
processes
set.
a little bit better.
Yes, yep.
And
And
so
that's
that's where we've
how
gotten.
things like getting the tax rate set a little bit sooner, getting free cash set a little bit sooner, getting all that. It's because we have been completely up to speed. We have a month-end close process, and everything is running very smoothly.
Awesome.
Yes. It's
Congratulations.
very exciting to finally be there.
Well, and that's also really important
It's- yeah.
to reiterate, since we also handled that payoff from way back when. I know it predated all of us,
Yes.
but I think, it's really helpful to explain it as an old item, but that there were checks and balances in place, even theoretically, a few years ago. But we
Yes.
were not necessarily able to execute that. And now
Right.
we are, and they're reconciled, and not just reconciled saying, now we know what the differences are, but
No,
we,
they're reconciled. We know what everything is. There are no unidentified balances that we're looking into. Yes, completely,
great to hear.
fully
Thank you.
reconciled. So, yes, that is a relief. And we've set up different processes, like how we record revenue and push it all the way through to my end. It's more in like batches by deposit as opposed to doing like 1 month at a time, which both ways are completely acceptable. We all just have found this to be much easier to follow, and if anybody came in, they'd be able to follow it much easier. The auditors think it's easier to follow, so that's nice, and it's way easier when I do the cash rec to find the differences too. So that's
Right,
made a
the
big
more
difference.
up-to-date you are, the easier it is.
Yes, and
right?
the more
Because you've got-
detailed information you have, because going from putting revenue in as, it was just one batch every month of revenue.
Big number.
Yeah, each month, which is fine, it works and a lot of places do it that way. But when you start to have variances and can't figure out where they are, it's really hard to go back and follow that to figure out what it is. So we changed the way we did that, and actually that consultant really helped with that. And we have just continued to maintain that, so that's been really helpful. And it makes everything go by.
And that's probably what's freed up time for you to
Yep.
implement the automatic bill pay for the other departments
Yep.
and the other initiatives and stuff. So, oh, that's all great to
Exactly.
hear.
Anyone have anything?
Just my empathy. I know, I've got 2,054 accounts, and I inherited a jumble mess, so I can empathize with.
Some days it's fun. Some days you just really don't want to do it. But when you get to the end, it's great.
Yeah,
There is an end.
when I get there, I'll be happy to. Just,
Exactly,
in between now and then, sometimes I want to jump off the roof.
Yes. I understand how you feel.
What's the next number? We can't use that number.
That's not the department number.
Yeah,
Great, thank you so much.
Awesome, great. Thank you, Ellen.
thank you.
I'm going to leave you there, though, for 1 second, just because
Okay.
the next item on the agenda was just the December results. I know I
Okay.
had distributed that out to everyone, and I believe you had said still no concerns. Everything seems to
No,
be.
no concerns, like Steve said, I mean, we always watch utilities, but we really don't know till spring, when the bills start to slow down, how we're gonna settle for the rest of the year. No one has come to me saying they think they're gonna go over in anything, so that's nice. You definitely don't want that in January. And I can't think of anyone. I think utilities was the only one I said I'm watching so far. I mean, it's always the hot button ones, healthcare, utilities.
Snow and ice.
It's usually around this time of year, around January, February, that I start doing a little bit more analysis in there. You know, what are our monthly fees? How much money do we have left? What are we looking at? And I look at the grant funds to see that everyone's, submitting for their reimbursements in a timely manner, and those aren't huge negative balances that we would get hit for free cash. So I'll be doing that. I haven't done that yet. I've been working on budget and town report. My town report's done. I think everybody likes getting that off their plate. But yeah, no, I'm not worried, and our collection rate seems to be maintaining. So I'm not concerned at this point.
Great. So we like to hear
Yeah.
halfway through the year.
Exactly.
So we can focus on worrying about
Next year.
2025?
Next year. Yeah, and beyond.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda, a discussion on a warrant article to change the town clerk from an elected to an appointed position. I believe, Ruth, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but this came up during the DLS review.
I just read the DLS review, and I thought that they had mentioned it in that conversation, but when I just read the DLS review, they didn't actually write it as a recommendation. But I recall we had a conversation, but they did recommend the Board of Assessor.
Which is on the ballot for this year.
Yeah. And, a few years ago, when our highway superintendent retired, we took that time to say, maybe now we would consider making that appointed rather than elected. And I just thought that along those lines, our town clerk in her budget review said that she was planning to not rerun for re-election next year. So I thought maybe this would be the opportunity to discuss whether or not that role should also be appointed as opposed to elected. And I think that I think it follows suit with the superintendent with the Board of Assessors, I mean, the Highway Superintendent, the Board of Assessors, I think it just gives us a lot more checks and balances, and it also opens up the candidates to outside of our town. I know that the clerk in West Newbury is wonderful, and I believe he's a Haverhill. I believe he's appointed. And I would just be curious, I think it's something that we should talk about and think about and ask our town administrator her opinion and really look into what other communities are doing, because it seems to me to be a logical step to take with the knowledge that she's planning to open that position back up.
I mean, I think I'm kind of in agreement in the terms of having a candidate pool, that we're not narrowed to just the residents of the town. That's not to say there are not qualified people within the town who could fill the role, but what happens if nobody runs? And then what do you do? Then you have no town clerk, and then the board is going to appoint somebody anyway. So, I just want to make sure, again, like, when we've spent all this time and energy, fixing departments and making them run more smoothly, that we look at the future of the town as well, and whether there's benefit to doing this by having a wider array of candidates that can apply.
I mean, the clerk role has really grown to be a complicated role, a role of very high responsibility, running the elections, all of the vital records, and I can't even begin to explain what is in that job description. And so I just think it's not to be taken lightly how important it is. It is,
That role is vitally important, and we found that out in a number of cases when, especially during the pandemic, people couldn't get death certificates to bury their loved ones, marriage certificates to get married, birth certificates to get kids into school. I've been advocating for this for a number of years, and now with the current salary, I think it's more prudent that this be changed from an elected to an appointed, because at the current salary, I don't think we should be paying for on-the-job training, which, as long as it's an elected position, most candidates are not going to have any practical experience in that role. It requires a broad knowledge of the laws, a lot of mass general law. One of the big reasons why I advocated for the change in superintendent was a number of times when I was selectman, I would ask the superintendent to come forward, and basically, I don't answer to you folks, I answer to the people every 3 years, so I'll see you in 2.5 when I'm gonna run for re-election. It's not a position that should lack oversight and control, but every 3 years. And at the current salary, the town should expect to hire someone that has experience, that has the talents and the skills to run that department effectively from day one, not grow into it over the course of 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, whatever, how many years it takes to absorb that kind of knowledge coming from a completely blank slate. I think it's the best way to move forward. I mean, one of these days is a joke. This town could elect Tony the Pony, and you're going to be stuck with it for 3 years. And that's the reality.
It could cripple the town.
It could.
If it's so far, it works, in the spirit of what that elected role is supposed to be.
We've been lucky because we've had dedicated, committed people, but that doesn't mean that's going to continue. Theoretically, you could run, you could get elected, and there's not a thing you can do for 3 years. I don't have to show up. You're going to have to pay me, though.
But that doesn't
I'm only
happen.
answerable every 3 years. Maybe I'll come and run the elections, but other than that, you might not see me. And there's no accountability now, other than the next time the election comes up, because anybody will tell you, trying to recall with our bylaws, it takes you 6 years to recall somebody in a 3-year position, so it's not worth it. It'll never happen. It makes too much sense at this point in time, especially given Ms. Cuniff's kind of, this might be my last go-round. This is the perfect time.
Does Beth know about this? The current town clerk, that we're going to discuss this?
It's on the agenda, so you would have seen the agenda.
Yeah. She posted.
I'm going to come out with this. It ain't broke, don't try fixing it, unless we can appoint the Board of Selectmen as well. Yeah, depending on what Board of Selectmen you have, okay? And I'm not comfortable with the existing board doing this. So if it ain't broke, Beth's doing a great job, I'm sorry.
Beth is doing a great job.
not saying-
No.
Beth said she's not going to run for reelection a year from now.
Okay,
So that would mean the position is vacant. On
And
top of
so
that,
the conversation is,
well, I didn't know that.
yeah,
on top of that,
sorry, I thought that I opened the conversation in that context. In her budget review with us, in her budget documents, she said she's not planning to run for reelection a year from May. So she will finish her term.
All right, so it's down whether I trust the townspeople over the Board of Selectmen doing the appointment. I'm having a problem with that.
Well, but the board,
Okay, let's talk about that.
but
and it's just, and we're just opening it up for discussion,
Yeah.
and we need to discuss it, we can't discuss
There's-
it not in a meeting.
Right, and then
Because-
there's also a timeline that if we were to want this to happen, then it would need to go to town meeting this year, and then it would go on the ballot next year.
Well, the assessors got turned down at town meeting, so don't think that that's going to just happen. So,
we'll see, but, the phrase, and I love you, Jim, don't get me wrong, but the phrase, if it ain't broken, don't fix it. Does anybody out there remember the rotary phone being broken? Raise your hand if you do. But I don't. I just remembered it being replaced by better technology, the touchstone. And then the touchstone wasn't broken, but now everybody's got this cell phone, right? So it's not that anything was broken. Sometimes there's better ways, there's a better mousetrap, there's better technology that you want to leverage for your own efficiencies, to take advantage of those newer technologies or newer ways to build a mousetrap. Nobody's saying anything was broken. It just maybe better ways to do things today.
And can I make it perfectly clear that I wouldn't be participating in this conversation if the clerk hadn't stated that she was going to not run for reelection a year from now. So I'm just saying that sort of begs the question, is this the best way to have that position filled?
And is
We've
this
made
the
other
best opportunity?
changes. Other communities don't do it this way, so should we have this conversation and evaluation? Should we go on a fact-finding mission? Should we get guidance from the MMA, from other towns? What do we reconsider? That's all.
I think you're spot on with the timing.
Do we want to inquire with other towns and see what their,
I think so. I think that we should see what is the commonly used practice across the state of Massachusetts and at least get information for ourselves. That seems reasonable. That seems reasonable and responsible and, right?
I think it's good to have, again, like, what are the best practices? That's what you're always trying to strive for is what is the best practice? Where can you make changes that, again, could be helpful or could be beneficial? Again, if you have a limited pool of candidates and it has to be a resident, what if you don't have a resident
Who wants to
who
run
wants-
for an
who wants to
elected
run for it?
position?
And then, again, then you're left with nobody, and then the default is the board appoints somebody. So I think it's a good step forward to say, like, what are the other communities, doing? And then go from there. Because
Yeah.
again, it takes time. And this isn't like, okay, this is what we want to do and it's there tomorrow. Like, it's a multi-step process.
It's risk management too, right? The same conversation with just a slightly different lens.
Right, exactly.
It is, how do you beat down the risk, get the best person in there, and have control over something related to their performance over time? And you don't necessarily get that with an elected official, as you said.
You do, you just have to wait.
You have to wait, right?
Oh, I would agree.
I'm fine either way, just keep in mind that what works best at McDonald's doesn't necessarily work best at Burger King.
Right, no, but again, like, if we have a basis to say, okay, like, if we've looked at, our comparable communities that we know.
And this
and-
respects
and
for us.
This is how they approach it, this is, we're the only ones with an appointed position. Well, why is that? Why have they changed their process over time? What did they find, or what did they decide made it more appropriate to go that route? But again, like Mark said, like, risk management, that's always your biggest thing. It is a very vital role
Mhm.
in this building.
Mhm.
And you do want to make sure that you're getting the most qualified person that you can.
Absolutely.
Okay. Ruth, do you want to work on
Sure.
that? Okay. We can always revisit it at a future meeting, just let me know.
Yep.
When there's data available.
See what we can dig up?
Sure, absolutely. Okay. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the January 31st, 2024.
I've read through those and make a motion to approve the minutes from Wednesday, January 31st, 2024.
Motion, is there a second?
You can vote.
Second that motion.
Mark will second. Is there any discussion on them? Nope, okay. We'll have a vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous. The next item on the agenda is town administrator updates. Rebecca, I don't know if you have anything. I know we kind of skipped over the town administrator budgets, but I'm assuming we're still kind of status quo on your stuff based on a lot of it is moving still at this time.
Yes.
Quite fluid.
So, I will just give you a couple of updates because I know that it's getting late. So first and foremost, one of the things is that talking to the departments and in prior years, there would like to be, and I think that the board has expressed this as well, more communication about the decisions that are made by the finance board after they are made, instead of just submitting the budget on the warrant and having to have them take a look at it, or having, like last year, me forwarding them an updated budget. A lot of that kind of stems from one of the, I think it was FY '23, when there was the override and a lot of the changes were coming out and they were back and forth. And so a lot of departments had said, is the finance board going to give us an understanding of, like, okay, like they listened to what I said, we had some back and forth, but what am I getting approved for? Or what are they putting forward to town meeting? Like, did they understand what I was saying, that I needed this money for their software? Or do they understand this is a goal of mine? Or just some type of communication. So I talked to the chair briefly before the meeting, and I just said maybe it's as simple as like an email that is drafted that just says, listening to your discussion on your department. We really appreciate the initiatives you took to do this and that and whatever. And then also, as part of that, we know you put forward this amount for this particular item and increase your line item by whatever percentage, but, unfortunately, based upon what we have available to you, we can only increase it by this percentage instead of that percentage, but we admire your contribution to moving this effort forward, blah, 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 blah. So just something in the form of a communication to the departments to just let them know that you understood, you heard their conversation, it wasn't just listening, that you actually understood what they were trying to put forward, and that this is what it is, in fact, that the finance board is going to recommend to town meeting for approval, and these are the reasons why. Even, some even commented, like, I don't even care if they say no to everything, but at least I know that they said no to everything. I don't have to just get the approved budget and the warrant and be like, oh, well, they didn't approve anything. So it's just that extra level of communication that would be appreciated. And whether that is a more formal letter that the finance board wants to do, it's completely up to you, or if it's a draft email that, we draft and then you all approve and then I send out so that it's more streamlined, whatever that process looks like, it was just something that I wanted to bring forward to the board to see if you would be amenable to doing such. So there was that item. And we can put that on the next agenda for a more detailed discussion.
Sure.
If the chair would agree.
Nope, that's fine.
And then the other item I was, wanted to update the board is, I had an opportunity, or I was invited to a meeting with the Whittier School Administration, specifically the superintendent, as well as the business manager, whatever one it is, as well as members, managers, and mayors of the other 11-member communities. Not everyone was present, but the superintendent gave us an opportunity to give her feedback on what our personal opinions were as to why the vote failed, and by such a large amount. And so we were able to go around the table and talked about a lot of different things that we've talked about in this room, given the, the monetary value, just the general understanding that people with inflation, or they don't have extra money that they want or are willing to give. Just the framing of the argument, the yes vote campaign, the way that the project was presented, the background information, the selection of the contractor. So we talked about just about everything, just kind of laying it on the table as this is why we don't believe that it was successful, and the superintendent agreed that there were things that obviously in hindsight they would have done better as well. But we're all human, we improve every day, and so it was productive in the sense that we were able to have that back and forth moving forward. On that note, we talked a little bit about next steps. It was always a conversation as to, all right, if the school doesn't pass, we're going to move forward with capital. Here you go, you're going to spend more in capital. Understanding that that's not exactly the relationship that we want to have with our vocational tech school, and understanding the feedback of the other communities and the finance boards and board of selectmen and counselors and et cetera, they've recognized that they need to do a little bit more, again, homework to allow for a better conversation to occur. So it looks as though they will be exploring more of a detailed report as to what fixes need to be done. Because no matter what, the school needs to operate and it needs to be safe. And the superintendent recognizes while the approach that they took was not ideal, she still has an obligation to make sure that the teachers and the students are in good condition. So she is working to assemble a document that really puts together like what needs to be done right this second. So the wastewater treatment facility is something that definitely needs to be done right this second. Now, what does that look like? There's other opportunities presented that may be considered as an option. Merrimack is proceeding with a wastewater treatment facility of their own. Is that an opportunity for them to tie into that system and not necessarily invest in a system on site by themselves? So that would alleviate some of the cost burden. So they're taking a closer look into those types of situations and weighing out what needs to be done right now and what can be done in the near future. And then they plan to put that before the 11-member communities and update us as to what they're looking to do moving forward. So nothing was promised, nothing was guaranteed. I still don't know 100% what's going to happen, But it doesn't appear that for the budget assessment that we typically receive in February, that we're gonna, well, February, March, that we're really gonna see any additional capital expenditures other than, in our operating expense, other than the operating expense that we see based upon our student enrollment for Whittier, which I think they said we should estimate approximately another 2 students for the next fiscal year. So that being said, we do have an estimate in the budget that reflects that. I showed them the estimate. They said that they think that their basic, assessment, they believe that that should be good, but that's not the final number. So I don't believe that we will see that for this particular budget and this particular annual town meeting. That being said, they did end with the fact that they might come back in the fall. So for us, we don't have a fall town meeting. It's not something that we typically do unless we absolutely need to. So based upon how they proceed, we might need to call a town meeting in the fall and address as needed. But that's to say if they do move forward. So things are still very, very up in the air. There's really not a lot of concrete answers that I have for you. But I do think that it speaks volumes that the administration was willing to have a conversation, acknowledge that there was mistakes on different ends of the debate and the conversation, and recognizes that ultimately we need to work together if we're to see Whittier succeed in any way, shape, and form. So I thought that was really good, and I just wanted to let the board know that we had that initial meeting, and while again, no concrete answers, let you know that we are having those conversations, and any additional information that I receive, I'll share with the board. And then the last update I had is to, one, remind you that the joint school committee meeting with the Board of Selectmen and Finance Boards for the Tri-Towns, that is going to be happening on February 13th at 6 p.m. over at the middle high school. Again, it's not exactly an ideal time because the Whittier School Committee is also meeting on February 13th to discuss their own next steps. So I know a couple of communities are a little torn in terms of which FinCom and Board of Selectmen members are going to which meeting. So you do have an option. For those that have returned the email that I sent out, I have given your name over to Pentucket to let them know you'll attend.
Was it due already?
Hmm?
No.
You still have time, so if you are going to attend, just let me know, I'll just send the name over to Pentucket. But you're also obviously welcome to go to the Whittier School as well. For the Pentucket Regional School District, I don't know if you've had an opportunity to look online, but they have released their budget book. If you look at their budget book,
You'll cry.
I read it.
it's not ideal in terms of the assessment that is being put forward. I know that a lot of what we had talked about in previous meetings that are burdens upon our budget, such as our retirement, our health insurance, our trash budget, are all really big numbers this year that impact our budget substantially. And like the school, it's retirement, it's their health insurance, and then it's their equivalent of trash, well, not trash, but a larger budget number is their special education. So that's another larger item that they have that we don't have, but is essentially about the same amount if you think about it in terms of a monetary perspective to our overall budget. And not something that we can necessarily control because it's a contractual item. So they have their items that they have to contend with. So it looks like, based upon the minimum contribution levels that we're supposed to provide for fiscal year '25 is about 21 million between the 3 towns. When it breaks down, it's about 8 million for Groveland. That's about, I think it's about a 4% increase in what we're, 3.67 something for what we're supposed to provide for an increase in minimum contribution for the Chapter 70 formula. We are a 2-step method over in Pentucket, so that means that we take that number, the minimum aid contribution, their assessment, we minus it, we get the difference, then we take the difference and we multiply it by the per pupil, so the percentage that we get when we add up all the students, in addition to the charter school as well as the choice out students, and then we get our assessed number. And that number that they're providing us is a 7% increase over last fiscal year. So if you look at the way that their budget has grown for the last few years, you'll see I think it's an 8% increase in FY22, 2% increase in FY23, and that was due to the override. So the override failed. Because the override failed in both communities, they went back to the school and they made cuts and they did what they needed to do. That only increased 2% that year. Then it went back up to 7%, and now this year, I misspoke, there's only increase in the budget for their overall budget 4%, but our increase to the town is 7%.
All right, increase is 7%.
So you can see that their budget has grown substantially over the last few fiscal years. You can see how state aid and the minimum aid contribution plays into that. You can see that, last fiscal year, the minimum aid contribution was much higher, which means that we are required by law to spend more towards the school. This year, it's a smaller increase. That being said, that means that they don't get as much money from the minimum aid contribution, which is why it's interesting to see that the amount of money that they're requesting over that is $10.2 million. So I've expressed my concerns to the administration in terms of that. I think that a lot of the finance board members and the board of selectmen and just us here at Town Hall have recognized the burden that is placed on the taxpayer and the fact that, the override was not really exactly something everybody wanted to see, but understood that it was necessary in order to move forward. So they were hoping for a little bit of a break there. So I think that we tried our best in assembling an estimated budget that was respectful of that. The budget that we prepared to assume such sacrifices came with a lot of sacrifices, such as level funding positions, level funding line items, cutting line items, not filling positions, and leaving Groveland, 2 years behind in order to make do on our word that we would try and not push forward with an override. The number that they released automatically, without a doubt, 100% requires us to go for an override. There's just nothing else to cut at that point. When you're talking about level funding employees, you're talking about not filling positions. The next thing is to cut positions, and you're talking about looking at $600,000. $600,000 is an entire department, and that's the only way you're going to get it. You can't cut Susie for $60,000 and then Tom for $20,000 and be like, oh, there we go. But that's two crucial positions that you just cut in order to get that number. So it's been a very stressful time trying to figure out exactly what that would look like. So the Finance Board and the Board of Selectmen definitely have their work cut out for them with this particular budget. It is not a pretty sight. But hopefully the superintendent and the school committee can give us a little bit more insight into what types of sacrifices that they're making and efforts to make sure that they can operate, at the same time being mindful that the communities and the taxpayers just don't have any more that they can offer in terms of.
I mean, there's zero chance that an override is going to pass this year. It passed by a handful of votes last year. And, I feel like last year was the year that we said we haven't had an operational override in X many years, and we need to have the opportunity to reset it, and it was a good faith effort. And to go back and ask for it again, I mean, if we have to put it on the ballot, we have to put it on the ballot because we have to put it forth to the taxpayers. Otherwise, we automatically assume that we accept it. But I won't be supporting it. Zero chance. So there.
Amen.
I'm beside myself. I really am.
You'll have your chance next week, Ruth. Don't be shy.
I print this out. I dug through numbers again. It's lines after lines and columns of zeros, and I'm trying to find numbers. I'm trying to figure out what relates to different schools, and there's just things in here that again, 2 years ago, I was the big transparency person, and this didn't agree to what you were saying, and I see it again this year in terms of line items that are new this year, that they're like, oh, special reserve fund.
Yeah,
And
there's
I'm like,
just no
well,
question that it equals our pain.
But
None.
they're not big numbers in terms of their budget, but they're big numbers when you allocate it down to us. There's two new accounts on here that they don't mention in these other ones that say, oh, here are our new operational requests. They're not mentioned here. So I have a lot of questions in terms of like, what are they doing? How are you pushing things through, but then not being transparent to us that you're adding these line items in? Or like, again, we've been funding positions using ESSER funds for years. And now, well, we're not going to use, those funds don't exist anymore. So now they're going to go on your budgets, whether you can afford them or not.
So ESSER was supposed to be a helpful thing. It was federal aid to help everybody, and it's crippled us because now the ESSER funds aren't there anymore, but they beefed up all of those positions that now we need to fund out of our
Our pocket.
pocket, and we don't have the money for it. We just simply do not.
We'll just tell them that we can't afford it.
You know, there's new
Do it.
administrative positions.
So I'm gonna tell them.
There's secondary administrative positions being added when we can't even fund like a part-time admin assistant for the town hall to run. And we're expecting our town administrator to work 100 hours.
No, my number one priority this year was to get an administrative assistant for our town administrator. And to make that simple goal so far out of our reach is just not okay. And I just feel like, again, there's a disconnect between the two organizations. And it's upsetting.
Well, we done or what? I'm done.
Yeah, yeah. Again, I'll say it again, as I said last week, the lack of self-awareness is astonishing. I mean, 2 years ago, it failed. Last year, $1.25 million. This year, you would think that, well, we better live within our budget. But again, when you have to cut, you have to cut. But the cuts shouldn't be all over here. The cuts should be equally painful to the administration. And again, I see year after year after year a dwindling student population with increased overhead year after year after year. I don't get it. If I have less students, I need less faculty. And it shouldn't be a case of fear that, if we don't get this money, then there's going to be 62 kids in every classroom. I don't think that's reality.
No, and actually, in the budget book, they actually talk about classroom sizes.
But that was the fear that we were
And-
presented with last year.
But they're showing, for like the Bagnell, they're showing third grade is gonna have 28 students per class. But I also serve on the school council at the Bagnell, and basically I was told those are not accurate numbers. That would never happen. So, again, this is what we're going off of, and it's not factual. And then it's doesn't line up with their commentary. So this is where I start to have trouble, where things, as an auditor by nature, when things don't line up,
When they don't tie,
they don't tie.
yeah, I have the
How do
same
you? There's no.
lousy feeling.
Yeah. What else are you not putting in here that's accurate? I start to doubt the numbers, I start to doubt what people are saying, and then, again, go back to the fact that here we are adding, this administrative position, adding this administrative position, wanting to add, there's like adding like 19 paraprofessionals in here. I understand that there may be a need, but there is also the ability to do those in increments while still allowing the municipalities to operate and not have to cut positions that they don't have anywhere to cut. I mean, we have,
Nothing.
we have the town clerk, we have an assistant. That assistant is, part-time, right, Rebecca? The town clerk assistant is part-time,
She is,
right?
yes.
So Ellen, Michelle has someone working underneath her, but like, then you start looking at, well, then what do we do? Cut those people? And then all the progress we've made is
We
gonna
lose.
step back. And then we're going to run into, not saying that we will, but you could potentially run into the issues where we've had in the past, where things weren't being reconciled timely. Things are missed, all of the progress that we've spent all this time and energy and money on
Worse yet,
are gonna,
people are so overloaded
they'll quit.
that, yes, there's a tremendous exodus of the brain power that just exits the town, and you can't replace it.
And we saw what that happened when the finance director left.
Mhm.
And how very quickly we saw a lot of things.
And it took
In
3 to 4
it took-
years to really pull it all back together.
Right.
Doesn't take long to break it apart, but it's again, knowing, you would think that somebody over there in that school knew how to do math, but I begin to question that, because they know that we're only allowed to increase our budget by 2.5%. So how in God's green earth that you can propose a 4%, knowing that the towns you depend on for your source of revenue are limited to 2.5? I don't understand why nobody understands that math, that they teach some high-level math over there, but it doesn't seem to compute.
So
It's tragic.
I guess we'll have to voice this on Tuesday.
Yeah.
If we're given the opportunity,
It does say it's a public meeting, so.
and it was last year too, but it was more of a dog and pony show where, it turned out into a sales meeting, almost, a sales presentation. Last year we were nice. This year I think we need to be not so nice.
No, I agree.
Nice didn't get us anywhere last year.
All right. Rebecca, do you have?
Nope, those were my only 3 updates.
Great.
Can I ask you one question, going back to the Whittier? Has there been any discussion about putting together some kind of collaborative where all the invested parties are put into one room to say, okay, we understand the need, now how do we fund it? And then work toward that goal with all the communities at the same time to try and figure out a way. There's no doubt about it, you're gonna have to replace that building. We know we just replaced 2. It's the same age, you can't get parts anymore, it's inevitable, right? So the question becomes, how do we do it? So is there any talk about getting all the, parties in one place and say, okay, here's the issue, how do we get from point A to point B without breaking the bank in any one of the communities?
The only talk that we had about more of a task force was brought up by one of the mayors in the cities about convening a Whittier Regional School task force for the regional agreement. So getting the 11-member communities together, whether it be a member of the Finance Board and Board of Selectmen and their managers, and talking about how we can update the agreement that hasn't been updated since 1967 and do something similar to what we do in Pawtucket, and make sure that that agreement is reviewed every 3 years, so that it's in the forefront of everyone's mind and it doesn't just lapse and become forgotten about until a situation occurs. So we talked about that. But as for a pathway of moving forward, the ball really fell to the school committee, because the school committee ultimately has the responsibility of deciding how to move forward. Like with me, I present to you a plan, or I present to you a recommendation, and then it's up to the Finance Board or the Board of Selectmen to say yes, no, like this is what we're doing. So I think that right now, from my understanding of that conversation, is that hasn't happened yet, and that's going to be the meeting on the 13th to figure out exactly how the school committee intends to move forward with exactly that. What are we going to do? Because as you said, and as the superintendent said at that meeting, we can continue to slap $1 million Band-Aids on this building, but, I feel as though that's a disservice to the taxpayers at the same time, because in another 5 years, I'm going to ask you for a brand new building, or somebody else is, but it's going to happen. So what you bring forward is a very good idea, and I think it's something that is being explored, but not necessarily something that's been recommended, because it really has to come from the school committee. as they are the only ones with the authority to make that decision as how to move forward. But a great recommendation, and I can definitely share that with Maureen to see if she'd be willing to maybe present that or to explore that more with her, with her school committee.
Yeah, I mean, a loose analogy would be, you know, my child comes to me and says, "Daddy, I need $20." I'm the one with the wallet. So, you know, the child knows, if I want $20, I gotta go see Dad, or I gotta go see Mom. In this case, the 11 communities are Mom and Dad. We have the pockets, you know, we have the wallets. I would think that it would behoove them to try and work with us early on in the process to make sure that we all committed to the project and we all have a source of funding for the project, and that it won't be a miserable failure the next time it goes to a vote that it was this time, because it was a complete disaster. I mean, it was a landslide. It wasn't even close.
Well,
So that tells you something about
it's going to be close no matter what.
just
It's never going to be
the lack of
easy.
involvement in getting the biggest umbrella you can.
Okay. All right, the next item on the agenda is to plan the next meeting. As Rebecca said, there's the joint meeting with Pawtucket Regional School District Board of Selectmen on the 13th at 6 PM. And then our next scheduled meeting, based on our dates for the budget, is February 28th at 5 PM. And then what we have left to go through and review is the library and water and sewer, and then any town budgets that are finalized at that point. And if I am correct in stating, the school committee meets the day before, I believe, for their vote on the budget. Because they meet the 13th, and then I think they meet 2 weeks later to vote the budget. So we may have information at that point in terms of the budget. And then otherwise, there's just, if there's anything else that came up since the posting, does anyone have anything? No? Okay, then
I call for adjournment at 7:50 if you have nothing else.
I have nothing else.
Motion to adjourn at 7:50 PM.
I will second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous. Thank you, everyone, for your time.
Thank you.